In northern Italy, just outside of Turin, two brothers with homemade radio equipment had been tuned into communications from space since the days of Sputnik 1. Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, two amateur radio operators and early space enthusiasts, had successfully assembled their own listening station in an old World War II bunker at Torre Bert. Their unique base, which evolved from a few radio receivers, had intercepted the first few transmissions from Sputnik on the frequencies published by the Soviet Union. A small metallic sphere, which was to begin the space race, appeared to the Cordiglia brothers in 1957 as a faint sound making its way across the Earth. The brothers had recorded the first artificial satellite in human history. A month later, the sound of Laika's heartbeat filled the crowded room of the Cordiglia's homemade, fully operational tracking station. Achille Cordiglia, a medical student, was able to identify the brief transmission as they tuned into the frequencies of Sputnik 2. Then, in 1958, the brothers recorded the Americans' first satellite, Explorer 1, as they personally witnessed the birth of the space race. The brothers' collection of magnetic tapes remains one of the largest archives of space recordings in private hands. Valuable as these recordings are, the real treasures of the Cordiglia library includes a number of recordings of alleged events that, to this day, have not made it into the history books. On November the 28th, 1960, for example, the Cordiglia brothers were to make one of their most startling discoveries. The brothers tuned into unusual signals on frequencies reserved for Soviet satellites. Alarmingly, from the static, an SOS signal emerged. Having an excellent understanding of the Doppler effect, whereby objects in motion transmit at differing wavelengths, the amateur radio operators were able to determine the location and movement of the transmission to its source in space. Whatever was transmitting this distress signal was not moving around the Earth. It was in fact moving away. This early transmission predates the first man in space by nearly 5 months. Again, in February of 1961, the Cordiglia brothers made 2 more unexplained recordings. Transmitted simultaneously, the tracking station at Torre Bert was stunned to record the heartbeat and labored breathing of a man, apparently transmitted from Earth orbit. Both recordings were shown to the brothers' father, a cardiologist, and Achille's medical professor, Dr. A.M. Dogliotti, both of whom independently confirmed them as the last breaths of a dying man. Using their experience and expertise, the Cordiglia brothers were now in the best position to record the first human voice from space, which they did on April the 12th, 1961, as Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth. Ten months after Gagarin returned to Earth, the United States was preparing to send its first astronaut into space. Fearing Soviet espionage, however, their frequencies remained a closely guarded secret. Unperturbed, the Cordiglia brothers were able to calculate the wavelength of the American transmissions simply by calculating the length of the antennae on photographs of the American capsules. The great achievements at Torre Bert had made Achille and Giovanni celebrities in Italy and gained the attention of both NASA and the Soviet Union. The 2 young Italians had turned their simple hobby into a groundbreaking new phenomenon as human spaceflight went from strength to strength. On the 23rd of May, 1961, responding to transmissions signaling an imminent launch, the Cordiglia brothers made their most dramatic recording to date. A transmission nobody could have predicted, and one which is still not explained to this day. Neither the Soviet Union nor the Russian Federation has released any information about cosmonauts dying in space, even now, 50 years later. Despite numerous failures and deaths during the early decades in space, not one human death in orbit has ever been formally acknowledged. The Soviet Union was proud to reward its heroes and even quicker to hide its mistakes, but the anonymous men and women who failed to survive mankind's first steps into the unknown remain mostly absent from the list of Soviet heroes.